and welcome to the final webinar in GE Digital's webinar series of Digital Industrial Transformation Playbook. My name is Akansha Kalia, and I lead Application Portfolio Strategy for GE Digital. For those who are joining us for the very first time, welcome. And for our returning attendees, we have enjoyed your journey with us. We certainly saved the best for the last in the series, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome GE Digital Chief Human Resources Officer Jennifer Waldo for this highlight session. To get us going, let me summarize our digital transformation playbook for those who are joining us for the very first time. In summary, when we talk about our digital industrial transformation, we have essentially moved from a stance of defending our service contracts to viewing the industrial internet as an opportunity to improve the overall competitiveness of the company, from internal productivity to entering new markets. It is this journey that we call our digital industrial transformation. Our strategy for the digital industrial transformation has been very straightforward, and let me walk you through those three components. First, we had to use these new digital capabilities internally to drive internal productivity and cost improvements. We call this GE for GE. Next, with these learnings, new innovations and capabilities, we bring a set of industrial applications that help our customers transform too, and we call that GE for our customers. Then we make our Predix platform and our enterprise categories, application categories, available to everyone for co-creation and innovation across all industrial categories. And we call that GE for the world. Now, transformation in any company is complex, and GE is no different. It requires change across people, process, and technology. And in order to accomplish transformation at scale, we broke down the challenge into 5 key focus areas for digital transformation. And many of you who have been along with us for the journey of this webinar series have heard us talk about the deep dives of 4 of these pillars. In summary, we created GE Digital as the organizational mechanism to drive change, providing us with all the operating model and organizational capabilities to be a digital industrial company. The first pillar of the transformation playbook is capabilities. Digital transformation in the industrial world is very, very different. Domain expertise is critical, and we are typically dealing with critical infrastructures where safety is always the first requirement. So we needed to build a very different set of capabilities that enable industrial companies to take advantage of the shift to digital. Our second pillar was focused on leveraging Predix and our enterprise applications. And Predix is a platform to enable GE and our customers to start at the innovation layer rather than in reinventing the IoT wheel or creating their own platform. Next, we realized that we couldn't really do this on our own. So we created an open innovation partner ecosystem that customers can leverage across industrial markets and industrial outcomes. Digital also means business model change. So the 5th pillar that you see on the slide, we brought that to life by creating a series of frameworks, workshops, and services for digital transformation that we could use throughout each GE business and with our partners as well. We even created a digital transformation blueprinting service that leverages this work to enable our customers. Now, finally, our 4th pillar that you see on the slide, and maybe the most important digital transformation pillar, is focused on talent and culture. We needed to develop the necessary processes for rapid decision-making, an environment where small experimental failures were okay, and an ongoing people management process to ensure that culture doesn't reject the transformation. This pillar is the topic of our discussion today, and without any further delay, I would like to welcome GE Digital's Chief Human Resources Officer, Jen Waldo. Jen, over to you.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm excited to chat with you today about GE's journey in transforming into a digital industrial. And as you're going to sort of hear from everything that we've learned along the way, how important this topic is. So what I thought I would do is walk you through the journey that we've been on, talk a little bit about how we're structured to try to optimize for a digital industrial company, the implications that all of that has had on both talent and culture, and then wrap up with some of the lessons that we've learned along the way. So we've been on this journey, I would say probably starting in actually the 2008-2009 timeframe, when we started to realize that our services businesses was going to evolve as digital became more and more important to many companies' business models. And so there was a discussion that started about trying to really begin to build our software capability. So we hired Bill Rue, who leads our business today, in the 2011 timeframe and opened our software center in San Ramon, California in the middle of 2012. We really did that because we felt that it was important to have access to both the talent as well as the ecosystem that the Bay Area provides, and that if we were really going to be serious about software and analytics, that it was important to have a flag that's planted here. And really in those early days, we partnered our technology teams, many of which we hired from the external market, with our aviation, power, and transportation services business. And we really started that strategy by focusing internally and optimizing our services business's productivity. And it was really that partnership and the incubation of that team that led to our early proofs of concept and started to show the power of what this could be. Simultaneous to that, we were really going through an IT transformation. We had, like many companies, a good 10-year plus history of outsourcing most of our capability and not making a lot of investment in our IT function. So we began a transformation in that as well by insourcing a lot of our key technical capability and starting to make critical investments in improving our own systems inside. In addition to that, at the same time, we started to realize that how you sell outcomes and really monetize software and analytics was maybe different than the way we had historically done it in our industrial businesses. And so as you can see, we had these three threads, technology, IT, and commercial, that were going on simultaneously. And it was really in September of 2015, which is hard to believe was 2 years ago, that we created GE Digital. And at the time, we brought together these organizations to create that as a business that works horizontally across GE, but also has a set of products in and of itself. And we brought those together to really simplify the organization, ensure that we were working against a single, really digital agenda for the company, and that we were aligning our capital allocation and resources really to that decision. We've since then even evolved the structure further. And what you see here is Digital 2.0, where we decided to really pull the commercial functions that were supporting all of our industrial businesses for digital into GE Digital so that we were getting more bang for our buck in terms of the resources and the process rigor that's required. In addition to that, we pulled all of the IT function into it as well. And so we really run our IT department horizontally today. And we call it now digital technology. And it's intentional that we rebranded that as we tried to build a contemporary IT function that is really focused on helping to lead the digital transformation from the technology side. So as you can see, we've evolved in a relatively short period of time to really begin to build sort of the right structure and talent and organizational capability. So we have done a lot to help really build our organizational framework. And what you will see here across the top is GE Digital and then all of our industrial business segments. We have a CEO and Chief Digital Officer of GE Digital, which is Bill Rue. And really the focus of GE Digital is to build and sell horizontal products such as Predix, Asset Performance Management, and ServiceMax. And you can see the metrics are orders and operating loss, typical of any tech company. We also, when we created GE Digital, introduced the idea of a Chief Digital Officer, for which we hired in each of those industrial businesses. And their real role is to focus on externally selling vertical products and portfolios. So these are the applications that sit on top of Predix that really solve our customers' industry-specific challenges. They leverage products from the horizontal like Predix or APM, and they also leverage their CIO partners because many times the first question our customers ask is, how are you using this inside of GE today? As you can see, the metrics are very similar to what you find in GE Digital. In addition to that, we have our DT function. So we have a CIO who is Jim Fowler. His organization inside of GE Digital really focuses on those enterprise-wide horizontal products, or what we call digital thread, and the infrastructure and services, with metrics being around DT productivity as well as synergies. we also have our CIOs that are aligned into the GE businesses as well. And while we don't call them the Chief Automation Officer, that's really what we expect their role to be, is to really partner with our business and our functional leaders and start to reimagine how leveraging digital technology can begin to reimagine the way that we get work done, with the goal of really driving unprecedented levels of productivity. And as you can see, very similar. They're intended to be process innovators. They deploy horizontal solutions that are being built inside of GE Digital, and they support our chief digital officers in many of their external engagements as well. And you can see that the metrics align very similar to our CIO organization inside of GE Digital. And this was really set up to drive mutual accountability between GE Digital as well as each of our verticals. So in addition to this, we have the metrics aligned. We all work against a single blueprint and strategy and operating plan. We also have all of the incentives aligned. So the way this works is that each of these organizations aggregate to a total digital viewpoint and operating plan for the company. And we really did this to drive, again, that mutual accountability. So we've learned a ton along the way, and have really had to transform our approach to digital talent at GE. I would say the first sort of important thing that we've learned is around talent acquisition. I joined the effort after 11 years in our industrial businesses in the 2012 timeframe, and it was very evident that the competition level and what is required to compete for this talent in the tech industry requires a level of sophistication that when you have great brand and you're number one in most of the markets for a very long time may not require. And so we have a model that's completely insourced now from a talent acquisition perspective. We have focused significantly on our brand, as some of the ads that many of you have seen would reflect. 90% of the candidates, when we reached out in those early days, really didn't have any idea that GE built any form of software. So we've worked very hard to help make sure that we could be competitive in this space. It also has required us to rethink compensation. Our industrial compensation principles are quite different from that in tech. So the mix between base, bonus, and equity is quite different, and we've had to really amend the way we think about it and our compensation philosophy in order to be able to compete. When you look at things like learning and you look at careers, it is really important that there is as much emphasis placed on both the managerial as well as the technical track. And historically at GE, and we're very well known for the leadership track, we've had to do a lot to balance both that with the technical as well. And we've really focused around capability growth rather than sort of band or job hopping, so that folks can really continue to grow their careers technically from the job that they're in. We've also had to think about, less classroom type training, much more online, on the go, so that people can continue to invest in themselves at times that's convenient for them. And really focus, again, much more so on building our technical careers as well as the leadership. Probably the biggest and the most notable here is culture. In the early days of this effort, we didn't even know who built software inside of GE, so it was very hard to create sort of the community for the digital people, and we've since been able to do that. We have around 26,000 digital people inside of GE, and then we've had to work really hard at how do you go from being a pure industrial company to a digital industrial, and that feels very differently culturally in a journey, candidly, that we are still on. So we've learned quite a few lessons along the way, and you can see here they really fall into three buckets around leadership, talent, and then again culture. Around leadership, we've learned that it's very important to have, the very top of the organization be very bought in and drive the digital transformation agenda. Jeff Inmelt was very integral in being able to lead this and help shape this for the company. And, there was many jokes that at the end of the day, he was probably the true chief digital officer, and we expect that to be the same with John Flannery. We also learned that it's important to make sure that you have digital people in digital jobs. In those early days, we had the tendency to take really great, fantastic GE talent, but maybe didn't have as much of the digital domain and really give a shot. And what we learned is that you tend to go slower, and you don't get sort of the difference of mindset and speed that you would find by having folks come in that maybe have a different perspective. We also learned that incubating the capabilities was the right thing to do. I mean, by starting the Software Center of Excellence in San Ramon, we were able to really incubate, build a culture that felt very native to those that we hired from the tech industry, but also begin to partner them with their industrial counterparts. But that incubation, I think, was one of the key things to our early days of success. Around talent, digital talent is really different in many of the principles than what you find in industrial talent. It requires thinking very differently about how you acquire the talent in the marketplace and compensation, careers, learning, just about everything you do around talent management. We've really had to amend to make sure that we were both competitive and we're someplace that our employees that we recruited externally would want to continue to work. And then we've also have this idea of digital natives, so people that come from the industry themselves, and then digital migrants. And so these migrants would be someone like myself that grew up and really have a background that's rooted in the industrial businesses, but have learned enough about the digital that you can really become a migrant and most importantly be a translator. Because there's a lot of differences in the language that's used, the mindset that's used, and you got to have people that can really bring both the digital and the industrial mindset together to be able to get to what we believe is our advantage, which is the combination of the two. And lastly, here's culture. Culture is the hardest part of this whole thing. And a lot of it is around, making sure that you have a clear idea of where you want to pull the culture towards. GE at the overall broad level has done a ton of things. We completely have thought through how we do performance development. We've implemented something called FastWorks, which takes the principles from the Lean Startup book and really helps with, educating our workforce about how do you think about growth and innovation and new business models and working differently. And then even our belief system inside of the company, if you read the beliefs, they look like many of the lessons you would find from any startup or tech company. This is transformational change, and I think most of us, and this was true for myself, have led a lot of incremental change, right, where you really kind of know what the options are, and you build sort of that shared need around those options, and then really sort of work folks towards leading that change. This is more of a turn the apple cart completely over, transformational change. And so it really challenges the way you think about how you pull people along. It challenges the way you think about speed, and challenges the way you think about leadership in general. And again, what I would wrap up with here is that culture is the hardest part, and you cannot underestimate sort of the unwritten norms inside of your culture. I mean, one of the examples that I would give is, having grown up in GE, I would have never said that fairness was something that was really important. And a lot of the challenges that we've experienced is it's not fair to treat sort of digital people different, whether it's from a compensation perspective or career paths and so forth. And so it's really forced us to think more market in, and that's just been something that's been very different than maybe the way we've done it in GE historically. And then the last thing I would say is that you have to really recognize that digital and industrial are quite different, and that's okay. And I think in those early days, we wanted to try to seem like it wasn't as different as it actually was, and I think we may have done ourselves a little bit of a disservice. And that sometimes by understanding the differences, you can actually pull things together more. And we've done a lot around trying to invest in explaining sort of the principles around digital, having our digital people understand how things work in the industrial marketplace with an effort to really pull it together as a digital industrial. So with that, I will hand it back, and we'll, I think, get ready for some questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Jen. Before we go into the questions, I want to acknowledge that I speak on behalf of all of the GE leadership and employees that it is just great to have you impeccably lead us through this transformational journey. I'm also very thrilled that our audience, which includes both our customers and partners, today got a chance to hear from you directly on this very important topic. For our audience, when we started this journey of sharing our transformation and playbook with you last year at Minds and Machines in San Francisco, and as we conclude this successful series, we hope that you will join us at our 6th annual Minds and Machines. Registration is now open for Minds and Machines 2017, which is on October 25th and 26th at Moscone West in San Francisco. We hope that you will join us to explore how you can leverage the Predix platform, our enterprise applications like APM and ServiceMax, develop new business models, and see how your peers are experiencing the value of becoming digital industrial. It is the premier industrial internet event where you will have the opportunity to hear keynotes from industry luminaries and insightful forums, get a chance to engage with your peers, and learn from technology vendors who are tackling the biggest IoT challenges, and also getting a chance to see our hands-on demos. With that, I would like to go to some questions. I see we have some questions lined up already. Jen, one of the questions that has come up in the Q&A is this, and I would love your insight into this. During GE's digital industrial culture transformation process, did you experience any organizational obstacles, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. We absolutely experienced lots of obstacles, as I think any kind of transformation journey, requires. I think probably if I had to summarize it, a lot of it is about mindset. There's a real difference in the sort of the principles that you find in the digital space. So when you think about risk tolerance, when you think about speed, when you think about a minimally viable product and how products evolve in an iterative, agile type fashion, those things are very different than the profile that you would find or how we think about the mindset in the industrial business. And that is for good reason. When you make aircraft engines and MRI machines and, wind turbines, you have to be mindful about safety and public security and all those things. And so the risk tolerance and how you think about building and deploying a product are really different. And so I would say it was that mindset gap and the mutual understanding of how each sort of works and how they're different has probably been one of the biggest obstacles that we've really had to work our way through. And it candidly kind of threads itself through, through everything, whether it's getting the digital folks having access to our installed base customers, or it's how you think about compensating people, or the mindset of digital talent who historically moves every 2 to 3 years, whereas, the average tenure inside of GE is actually quite high in our industrial businesses. So all of it, I would kind of boil down to the largest obstacle is really about that mindset gap and how you pull the two mindsets together.
Thank you. Thank you. That was fantastic. I know you talked about talent quite a bit in your presentation, but I'm seeing a lot of questions around that topic. So let me put one in front of you. The question is, how can a large organization compete for and retain top talent in a fast-moving market?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is you have to really lean into the market realities in the tech space. I think at least our experience was that while we had great brand and people really knew us in our industrial space where, we've been in business for a very long time and are recognized as key players, we just didn't have that advantage on the digital side. So we had to think a lot about, what would distinguish us, what would make us more attractive maybe, and how do we compete? And for us, it kind of boiled down to a couple of things. The first thing was really the vision for the industrial internet, and that it would really drive sort of that next wave of industrial productivity and transformation, and that GE had a unique position to really help make that happen in the world. And so it was really around our mission is probably one of the biggest things. The second thing is we really emphasized, we work on meaningful things. We power cities, we keep airplanes in the air, we help save, lives with the equipment that we, build and sell inside of our healthcare business. And so we've emphasized the meaningful industry impact and socioeconomic impact that we have on the world. And then the last thing was just cutting edge technology. Most people that work in this space want to work on the next thing and really cool technology, and we've really emphasized those three things. So that's what we've really, is the play that we've been running. It's been quite successful for us, and that we continue to focus on that. The last thing I would just say is that's the attraction part. What's also important is the retention part. And so it's just important that once folks have come in the door, that they still feel connected to that mission and that purpose. and feel connected to the meaningful things we do in the world, and that the technology and the work we put in front of them is still cutting edge and exciting work. And so I'd say those are the key things about attracting the right kind of talent.
I could not have agreed with you more, specifically around the attractiveness of the mission and the meaningfulness of the work that we present to our talent. I see we have time for one more question, so let me pick one here for you. The question here is, Jen, is tomorrow's talent composed of people that think and lead differently? And if yes, in what ways?
Yeah. I do think that it is, and I think that every industry, every job, every function in the world will, in some way, shape, or form, have to evolve or transform as a result of digital, including my own function of human resources. And I think that one of the biggest things that I think is going to be really different than the way the world has worked is the speed of technological change is getting faster and faster, and so things feel crazy fast and sporadic now, and I think that speed is only going to get faster. It's not going to get slower. And so that has impact on jobs and skills and the capabilities that are required. And, what that requires is for every person to sort of own their own learning journey. And, as I talk with groups, I always ask the question, and it's intended to be provocative, but if you thought your skills and capabilities would be outdated or irrelevant in 3 years, what would you do differently today? And I think one of the big things that I've learned from being in this space over the last 5 years is that there's this really healthy paranoia that people in the tech industry have around their product, their software, their skills getting disrupted. And I think it's based on experience of watching that happen. And so as a result of it, there's a learning culture or a learning mindset around I need to own my skill set, and I need to ensure that, I can continue to evolve my skills. I mean, one of our very senior Predix engineering leaders was taking machine learning classes on the weekend. And it wasn't because GE had asked him to do that or anyone had suggested it to him. It was built from a natural curiosity and ownership of his skill set. That he felt machine learning was something he needed to continue to evolve. And I worry that we've got a workforce, just not only inside of GE, but in the world, that doesn't necessarily see sort of this tsunami of digital transformation coming and the impact on jobs and skills. And I don't know that employers will have a specific roadmap that says this is how you digitally transform, check the boxes. I think it's got to be much more innate, and I think that folks that are coming into the workforce today, it's an inherent part of the way they think that I think is going to be really required for the entire workforce, regardless of your industry or function going forward.
I think that's a very important consideration to actually close the webinar on. So appreciate you answering all these questions. And thank you again, Jen. It was indeed a treat to have you today as our speaker for our finale in this digital transformation series. And thank you, everyone, for joining us over the past year. Jen, you were saying something?
I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity, and this is hard stuff. It's also fun and exciting stuff, and wish everybody luck in their own journey. If there's anything that we can do to help, let us know.
Absolutely. Well, audience, we are absolutely excited to see you at our upcoming Minds and Machines in October. To make sure you get a chance to register, we will send you a link to register for our Minds and Machines event in the follow-up email after this webinar. In addition, we will also send you a PDF of GE Digital's Industrial Transformation Playbook as a wrap-up for the series. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you in October.